Back here quickly now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast to I think for the first time in my time doing this show, I've done a power rankings. I actually don't think I've done one of these ever in any of these segments. So we got a first time here, I guess, on the show, doing my very own power rankings here. And I think the divisional round at this stage with these teams left, it was pretty interesting to try and rank them because once I got past like six and I started ranking the other teams, it became extremely difficult. And I mean, it was fun doing it because everybody's so good now, obviously. So it makes it that much more interesting to kind of fit them in along the power rankings. But without further ado, I mean, here they are, starting off with number 8. We're gonna work our way up to the best team left in the divisional round. For a disclaimer, I made these rankings on Super Bowl contention, right? They're ranked on who I believe can not only make it to the Super Bowl, but also who has, the greatest chance of actually going and winning it, right? It's not based on talent of roster or anything like that. That's just merely a factor in all of this. But again, if it was based on talent, the Eagles would be number one anyway. So I based it on chances of making it to the Super Bowl and obviously winning it. So different factors go into those prerequisites, right? So that's why I had the Houston Texans in at number 8. To me, just a depleted squad, a lot of injuries, a lot of hurdles to get through at this point in the season, and they've had to get through a lot to even make it to this point, right? With the injuries to Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, those are extremely tough to get over, and you lose Stephon Diggs kind of before the halfway point of the year, or pretty early on, actually. You lose Stephon Diggs, so that's a huge blow. But even before that, you had the injury to Nico Collins that had him out for a good amount of time. Before that, you had the injury to Joe Mixon, and based on how both of those players started off the year playing so well, you lose Joe Mixon, then you lose Nico Collins, right? Then you lose Stephon Diggs, and then it's just really Tank Dell and those guys out there, and it just feels like a lot of hurdles in unexpected ways at unexpected times. And for a team that was so talented and a team that I really had ranked up there as one of the final contenders, in this thing, it feels a little bit unfortunate, right? And I just feel like it gets to a point where the talent starts to show up, and they're unfortunately not able to have all their players out there. So that's why I had the Texans in at number 8. I feel like it's going to take a lot for them to keep winning games, especially when they play the Chiefs tomorrow. So unfortunately for them, I have them at number 8. And then not too far off, might be a little bit low for some people. It's almost the same thing, with the Texans, it's the fact that they're injured at a very bad time, obviously, of the season. But with the Commanders, right, I just feel like they just need more. It's not like they're missing a lot of wide receivers, right? This is the group that they started with, and this is the group that they, I guess, envisioned, making it through the majority of the year with. And I just feel like at one point, the talent difference between some positions, because the NFL is such a collective effort, it's so team based that especially winning a playoff game, you need all aspects of your team to play very well, and it's hard to do it with, to kind of reference the NFL, one guy scoring like 45 points and everybody else just kind of playing hard defense and not turning the ball over and contributing with 10 points or 15 points, right? When some guy's just on his day, not missing, he's doing everything right on a basketball court and he's scoring 40 points, it's not the same thing. That could happen in the NFL, but it's really not going to amount to too much. And I feel like, in just this instance, especially with the Commanders taking on the Lions, I feel like it's just too much now. We're going to see a pretty big difference in terms of defense. I mean, Jaden Daniels might go out there and do his thing, but everything else, right? Their ability to stop the Lions, right? If they just continually allow them to score, are they going to be able to keep up? That's all the factors that kind of went through my head. So That's why I had the Commanders in at number 7. I just feel like at this point they might have reached their limit when they take on the Lions. But they're very fortunate to have Jaden Daniels. But still, I got him in at number 7. I definitely think they're lacking in some departments compared to the Lions. So in at number 6, I have the Los Angeles Rams, right? Just basically their young defense. It's kind of sporadic. Sporadic, I thought, was the best word used to describe them because their defense is very good. They got a lot of great players, like I mentioned, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, Jared Verse, and Braden Fisk. Their young defensive line is already one of the best defensive lines in general, but they do got a great offense also to kind of allow those guys to play pretty freely, pretty loose, right? If you're getting out to leads and you're playing very well on offense, you're letting these guys rest on the sideline. I think they're benefiting from that a lot as well. But I'm just not so sure that in the toughest moments where maybe the offense really isn't humming and really isn't all just bells and whistles, right? When in terms of success out there on the field, I wonder if this defense can sort of reciprocate the sort of support and performance that their offense usually does for them, right? If the defense is playing bad, then usually you can rely on this offense to at least put up points. But I'm just not so sure if the defense can do the exact same thing at this point in the playoffs, right? I think they have a great group and everything like that, but they're facing their toughest test of the entire year. And this is the litmus test if they're really able to be considered in that true contendership status. But until I see it, I mean, I picked the Rams to win. Until I see them win, I'll always have my doubts about them, at this point at least. So I have them in at number 6. And then at number 5, we're going to go over to the Baltimore Ravens. And for me, I got the Ravens, I guess, this low for a good amount of people just because they've fallen short a couple times. And, I mean, I understand if you understand the sentiment of if it's not now, then when with this team because of how talented they are and the fact that they added Derrick Henry, right? But like I kind of alluded to before, right? When you get into the playoffs and the postseason, everything just feels different. Even if you've played a guy before and in the regular season you beat him or you played pretty well, if that guy's Patrick Mahomes and the Ravens have fallen short to him on a couple times, you start questioning that, and they've just not been able to do it in this part of the game. And while Patrick's elevated himself to among the greats already, Lamar Jackson and this Ravens team hasn't been able to beat them in the playoffs just yet. And what's interesting about this topic, and I'll give away number 4 already because it's going to be the Bills, but I'm doing that just because it relates to what point I want to make. And I'll just show you the Bills now, right? Kind of moving on to them. These two teams are so similar to me because both of them, I have fallen short in twice because that's really what it's all about for both of them. And both of the quarterbacks especially because they got the same guy standing in their way, it feels like, each and every year. Josh has not beaten Patrick in the playoffs. He also hasn't beaten Joe Burrow in the playoffs. Lamar hasn't beaten Patrick in the playoffs. He's lost to Josh Allen already in the playoffs. But I think what's interesting about both of these teams and why I had the Bills just slightly ahead of the Ravens in at number 4 is because when Lamar's played in the playoffs, when the Ravens have played in the playoffs against the Chiefs, it always feels like at one point during the analysis or anything like that, it always feels like people turn their attention to Lamar because all the pressure's on Lamar, right? It always feels like when they lose or they're not playing well, the pressure, the fault is going to go on him. And it is unfair a little bit, but also I think we've just seen more instances where Lamar maybe has missed a throw here or there, or they're passing too much, they're not really running it, or he's not really running it too much, right? And we go back the next day and think that if he would have done this or if he would have done that, they could have been in a better spot to win this game. With Josh, and why I have the Bills slightly higher, is because I feel like in the playoffs, it's usually not been on him. It's usually him playing Patrick Mahomes wire to wire, second for second, responding each time Patrick does something. And the times they've lost, it's been on the defense when they let him score with like 13 seconds left and then into overtime. I believe last year, Tyler Bass missed a field goal that made them lose the game. It's never really, it feels like, on Josh. And to his credit, too, because he's played awesome, but I feel like with the Ravens, a lot of it falls on Lamar. And that's why I had Josh just slightly ahead of them. That's why I have the Bills slightly ahead of them in terms of my power rankings. I've just seen them play a little bit better than the Ravens against the Chiefs specifically in the playoffs. So that's 5-4, and now it allows me to move to the top three. And I have the Lions as my third team. While they're very talented, while I love the way they play, this would be, their first Super Bowl with a lot of young guys, with a lot of guys that really haven't been there. So I just worry. I feel like that's something that I value more than maybe a good amount of people, right? Because people will look at this Lions team and think that they have everything, that they're dominant and everything like that. But I mean, I don't know, because I'll obviously never been in the Super Bowl or anything like that. But I can only imagine, like, from hearing other people talk about it, and the Chiefs, talk about it all the time. Not to make it sound bad, but if you haven't ever been there and you have that whole week of media, you have a lot of free time on your hands, just unable to think of anything else but the Super Bowl and how things are gonna go. This is gonna be their first one in the team's, potentially the franchise's history. Dan Campbell's never coached in a Super Bowl. Jared Goff's played in one, but he's lost in it. I feel like all of that, it plays into my decision making, right? If you've never been there, never dealt with anything, any setbacks in the Super Bowl or anything like that, that could be a huge blow for you. And every little detail matters. So for the Lions, that's why I kind of had them at 3, where maybe some people would have had them higher. I just value that pretty highly. So that is what I had on there. And lastly here, just to kind of close out the episode here with these segments, or with these last two teams, as the number 2 team, I had I'm sure you can guess it, I had the Philadelphia Eagles. For the Eagles, I mean, they got everything. They got the talent, and unlike the Lions, they've been there. Not only have they been there, they could have beaten the Chiefs in that Super Bowl. I'm still sticking to the fact that if maybe Jalen Hurts doesn't fumble, I think before the first half, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe the Chiefs scored on it, then the Eagles probably win that game. But, a mistake like that, of that magnitude, is always going to be, just elevated a lot more. It's going to be blown up a lot more. It's going to be more significant, especially in the Super Bowl. But they're very fortunate to have, AJ back again, Jalen back again, a lot of guys back from that Super Bowl run. And now you add a guy like Saquon. They have the talent. They got the experience now, especially losing a Super Bowl, and how they're going to learn from that. I think they have the best chance of making it and contending for a Super Bowl. Of course, outside of number 1, I don't think it's to anybody's surprise, the Chiefs have the best chance of making it to the Super Bowl. They're the number 1 team left in the playoffs for all the reasons probably that you've heard already, right? That they've been there, obviously, for the last 6 years. Patrick, insane in the playoffs. If you need any sort of throw, any sort of moment, any sort of, clutch performance, you're not going to take anybody above Patrick, in all honesty. And Andy Reid, of course, a terrific job, just coaching them and getting them well prepared for this point of the season. You got guys like Travis Kelce, who people write off every year because the regular season's not looking typical for Travis Kelce, but then in the playoffs, again, they ramp it up. And if you think that they're clinical and error-free in the regular season, just wait until they get into the postseason, where they never really beat themselves, and they put a lot of pressure on their opponents to be perfect. And they got a good margin of error to work with also, to be fair, because of Patrick Mahomes. And this year, I just feel like they're a lot more well-balanced and just well-rounded because of guys like Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Travis, and other guys that they've incorporated as well. they're running the ball a lot more, and it just feels like, while it doesn't look so flashy and dominant in that way, they're methodical, they're clinical, they're calculated with every little drive, with every play. I think they got the most drives of 10 plays or more in the NFL. That's not by mistake, right? These guys, the details that these guys play with is insane. And they're chasing history, right? They're chasing a three-peat, which obviously has never been done before. And if they've made it the last two times, you get a good sense that they have a good idea of how to get back there again. So those are my power rankings. Those are, the how I see each team lining up, kind of comparing them to each other. And we'll see how the power rankings sort of shape up, I guess, going into next week. And also, we'll see how many of these teams are eliminated. If the top four move on, maybe we get an upset like I've predicted. We're going to talk about all of that next week. So that is going to be the end of today's show. I want to thank you guys for joining me on today's episode of the Chip Shot Football Podcast. And if you guys would, please subscribe, like, comment to the channel as well as the show. And also, if you want to see more content on the Chip Shot Football Podcast, go over to YouTube and visit both of the channels, the GSMC Sports Network channel and the GSMC Podcast Network channel, where we have more content and more coverage of the NFL on the Chip Shot Football Podcast regarding coverages, breaking news, reviews, previews of the game, covering the playoffs all throughout the duration of them. Join me each and every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for these live shows as well. But for right now, I'd like to wish you guys a great weekend. Go out there, watch the games, and we'll all come back here on Monday and talk about, I'm sure, all the craziness and unexpected things that have happened over the weekend. So, again, thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you guys back here again on Monday.
Mm-hmm. 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 Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to